Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Between Two Fans, where me, your host, Daniel, and Stevie P are sitting remotely with one another to discuss the last week's sporting fixtures, or the upcoming sporting fixtures, last week's results, and all the talking points in between. Stevie, how are you doing?
No, I can't complain. It's pretty hot down here, to be honest. So it's been a bit of a rough few days, especially on the cricket field. But another good weekend of sport. So plenty of reason and excuse for us to remain indoors where it's nice and aircon and consume as much water as humanly possible.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the opposite on my end, but alas, we were working our way to summer up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Stevie, let's get into our predictions we made last week. So if you're new around here, each week we're making 3 predictions on football, cricket, and rugby, between the 3 results, there's a winner of the week. At the moment, Steve currently leads 4-2.
My gut says I think it's about to be 4-3. I don't think I did very well last week.
Yeah, I'm looking to close it in. So let's see how we went. Started off with the City-Liverpool game. That result was a 1-1 draw. Stevie, you went for a 2-1 City win. I went for a 1-0 Liverpool win. So we've actually squared that one out. We're only one goal difference. So we're starting off with a tie. Then we move on to England versus Ireland. We were both way off it.
Yeah, well,
you
that was
went for Ireland by 25. I went for Ireland by 21. So while being 22 points from the truth, I am the winner for that game. And then New Zealand versus Australia. Stevie, you predicted either a 100-run or 4-wicket victory. I predicted either for Australia. I predicted either a 50-run or 3-wicket victory for New Zealand. And in fact, it was Australia almost on the nose who won by 3 wickets. So that's another tie. Stevie, it remains at 4-2. I feel like I've missed an opportunity there. Somehow, don't ask me why, but somehow I feel like my 1-0 is closer than a 2-1 in the City game. But we'll get into the dynamics of that game.
You predicted 1 goal. I predicted 3 goals. It was 2 goals. I mean, it's not quite sure how 1-0 is closer to a 1-1 than a 2-1, but that's your logic. That's your logic.
Yeah, I feel at least I'm mentally closing the gap, between 1 and 2. So the scores remain 4-2. I'm closing in slowly. I just took a little bit to find my feet. Granted, the only win of the week that I was still 22 points off the Ireland game.
Yeah, that's well.
But while we're on the topic of rugby, wow. What a weekend of 6 nations. I mean, all of them, or at least for the Italy, Scotland, England, Ireland, unbelievable down to the wire, and Wales, France, at least up until half time. We thought it looked like it might be another 1 or 2 point game. Let's take us through those, Stevie.
Yeah, look, I was lucky enough to be in the watch-alongs for those games, and cheap as me. I mean, the 2 best test matches of the year so far for me. Proper test match rugby. Small margins, very controversial calls, for example, which, and that's what you get when you get, games which are, so close that, the small marginal things suddenly become so big. I'm frustrated at Scotland, and we've said this every single week, and I sound very much like a broken record because I just, we were so close to having what would have been a 6 Nations final this weekend. And Scotland could have set that up if they had beaten Italy. But as someone who's been a staunch Italy fan for the last few years, saying that, no, this Italian side is special and it is getting a lot better. It's such a watershed moment for them to be able to go and beat Scotland, who going into last weekend were considered the second best team in the 6 Nations at the moment. So it's massive from them, and they had to earn it. I think Scotland once again proved why nobody sort of takes them almost seriously as like a top sort of 5 or top 4 side in the world, because they've got that sort of second half. They've got that inconsistency in them, and we saw that. In that second half where they couldn't really string things together. But I mean, the pace of play. I mean, guys were absolutely knackered at the end there. I mean, Scotland were trying to attack. I remember it went to Cameron Redpath, who'd been running hard and true all game, and you could just see he just had nothing left in his tank whatsoever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for those who missed it, Italy going out and winning that 31-29, and I think for me, the biggest pivotal moment was that disallowed try that that Scotland had. It really looked like that was just them breaking away. I think that would have been a 12-point lead, I believe, at the time in early on in the second half. And you underestimate what that can do mentally to an opposition trying to then cause a fight back. I mean, to be honest, Italy were actually quite lucky because from the penalty that they got after that disallowed try, Garbisi misses touch, and then another bad kick from Scotland, but then Italy straight away go on to score that try, which then makes it, I think, a 2-point game.
And no, it's amazing how I said that small moments just is entire games, and it just completely flips. I mean, I was watching Marty's UJ this week, and UJ were playing really, really well. They were looking to come back. And they kicked for touch, and the Marty's wing kept it in touch, in inverted commas, and they actually went on to score. And if you go look at the replay, actually stood in touch. I mean, UJ had all momentum, and you felt UJ had scored. Then they would have gone to complete the comeback, and instead they got hammered 55-22. And it's like that one small moment, which all of a sudden, just changes the entire thing, to the entire outcome of the game.
Yeah, but really, as you said, let's sing Italy's praises here, because they've deserved every bit of that result. It's been looking like it's coming. I would love to see them almost play England again, despite England putting up a world-class performance this weekend. But, hats off to them. Garbisi's slotting the kicks, bar one, which was probably one of the easiest ones. And actually, what I quite liked about it is it wasn't a massive kick, but he actually gave the tee to I forget who it was, but he gave it to someone else on a bit of a distant kick, just to show that, it's not really an ego thing at the end of the day.
I think it was the scrum. I think it was Paige Reload.
And actually the monster of a boot, but
I think what I did enjoy was his first kick when the ball fell off the tee.
Having little tackles to himself.
And you could just see him, literally just walking away, just laughing to himself. So it's nice to see that I think he is somebody that enjoys his rugby. You see players, and it's often the very talented, prodigious sort of maverick type of players who you can just see just love what they do. They're not that set. I mean, Finn Russ is a bit like that as well. You can always see there's a bit of shithousery involved in them, and then they can have a laugh with themselves. And I absolutely love watching that, because it's the kind of personality you want to see in the game.
Absolutely. And then, shock of the weekend: England beating Ireland 23 points to 22.
England beating the best team in the world. Remember, that's
best team in the world.
The entire South Africa's ready to go to war. Over a couple of pundits and Steve Borthwick's comments.
I mean, it was kind of teed up to, like, if this upset were to happen, just for Twitter to go crazy, which it has done. I don't think the hype surrounding Ireland has necessarily helped them too much, but Sheepers, what an absolute crack of a game. People are likening it to as good of a test match as some of those quarterfinals at the World Cup. What were your takeaways from the game, Stevie?
Yeah, look, I think it's the performance England have been threatening to bring. They've had moments in the last 6 months and under Borthwick where you can almost see, well, there's a side there, and there's players there. And I mean, for example, I thought Ben Earl's game in general really summed up England at the moment. So in the first half, for the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, he wasn't really getting too many meters. He was pretty ineffective. And then, I don't know what happened. I don't know if somebody said something to him or he had a bit of change. But all of a sudden, he started sort of changing his game up slightly just in the game. And all of a sudden, he was making line breaks. He was, getting over the advanced line every single time. Yeah, it was. And he just couldn't be stopped at one stage.
Yeah. And you need people who you can continue to depend on, who are just, going to bring kind of take the ball across that gain line. And he's now starting to do it very consistently for England. And he's one of those guys that if you're his opposition, you're saying, geez, I'm playing Ben Earl this weekend. I need to, be ready for that. And that's what England have needed, a real X factor player that, he's the one that stands head and shoulders above the rest, and people take note of when he's starting. But I mean, Ireland in the last year, though they've gone on this amazing streak, and granted they were, Grand Slam champions this time last year, haven't won their two biggest matches that's been faced in front of them. And New Zealand quarterfinal, we obviously don't know how they would have done in the semi and final of the World Cup, although they look to be blowing everyone out the water, having even being beaten South Africa. And I guess you could argue South Africa's in that bracket, so they've won one of their 3 big games. But not being able to close out in England at Twickenham, first bit of resistance. Do you think that's a mental barrier of Ireland's, or is it just a case where maybe they underestimated England, or England have just actually, just figured them out?
I think it has to be a certain mental barrier to a certain degree. It's. I mean, as you said, Grand Slam champions. They were flawless in the Six Nations last year, and flawless in the group stages during the World Cup. But we all know there's that whole mental thing about the fact that they can't win a quarterfinal, for example. They haven't got that sort of monkey off their back. And I think this will add to it, the fact that, all of a sudden they had this massive week. There's all this hype, this, records there to be broken. This is the game to get them another back-to-back Six Nations Grand Slam, and once again, then they fall short. So whether they believe it or not, there's definitely going to be a narrative that mentally that there is a bit of a mental block and something that needs to overcome. We all know that they are one of the best sides of the world. Whether they can call themselves the best side in the world, they're not currently ranked number 1. Didn't get past quarterfinal in the World Cup. They've just been beaten by an England side who have been beaten by Scotland this Six Nations as well. So it's not like England have been completely flawless, and this was the game for the Six Nations. England weren't actually contenders for the Six Nations until this game, and they've been poor. They should have probably lost to Italy in that first game. So this is not this world-class England side who've been putting in results week after week. Everybody's been criticizing this England side and saying this England side's not progressing until this week. So I think maybe this sort of maybe does bring Ireland a bit down to earth. I think this weekend they probably beat Scotland. But again, if, for example, they don't beat Scotland this weekend, and Scotland were to pull off another victory, then I think all of a sudden that idea of the best team in the world suddenly almost sort of evaporates, because now they've been beaten in a quarterfinal, they've been beaten by England, they get beaten by Scotland, which I don't think will happen. But it's amazing how you can go from being this untouchable side to being brought down to earth very, very quickly.
Yeah. To be fair, it's obviously not the players themselves calling themselves that, and it is just kind of a hype around their play. But I also don't think they haven't been putting 50 on every single opponent this Six Nations. You know what I mean? They've been very good. Particularly that French game, but they aren't at the heights of, as people are speculating, of 2015 All Blacks and stuff like that. Like it's not in that conversation yet. What I did say last week is this was England's opportunity, and the equivalent of what the Springboks looked at, and Rassie pointed out, as New Zealand away. Win New Zealand away and people will believe. This was the case where it's beat Ireland at home, granted, but beat Ireland, the current best team in the world, as everyone's calling them, and people can believe. And they did it not in a very different way to how they competed with the Springboks at the World Cup, interestingly. Now there's a whole lot of belief in England rugby, and the question is, can they do it again? Because I think with this England team, we've seen them maybe pick and choose when they want to stand up. And now clearly, there was the right kind of concoction of frustration from their side, looking to come to the big occasion. And also, to be honest, the public and the English rugby fan base giving them a lot of stick. So that all culminated in an amazing win. But can they just do it out of their own motivation? Was that just like a once-off thing, or are they able? Do you think they will be able to continue to repeat that Sunday performance as much as against a big opposition, but also against, let's say, a lesser one?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. The fact that, they shouldn't have to have this massive, this is this big game, and this massive narrative and big build-up every week for them to be able to perform. Because that's, as you said, that's the only time we've seen them really stand up and be counted. Every single time it's expected for them to rise and be a straightforward game. More often than not, they've often got the result, but have not always brought the performance. So yeah, I think it's a very good point. The fact that they need to be able to sort of bring that consistency and not have to have this massive big narrative and huge backstory going into games in order to be able to bring out the results that that they have. So, yeah, look, I think also we are seeing the Felix Jones influence. I think there's no doubt about that. A lot of South African fans are talking about them copying the Springbok defence. And I think if you thought that there was going to be no similarities with one of the big coaches and then one of the big reasons behind that when they moved over, you think you'd just be naive. Also the idea of sort of copying the Bok defence, it's not copying the Bok defence. The defence these days and defensive systems these days is the rush tactics. It's getting up early, it's making hits, it's stopping momentum. That's not a new concept. It's something that the Boks pioneered at the highest levels to the best success. It's a bit like the 6-2 split. The 6-2 split wasn't a new thing. We weren't the first ever team to do the 6-2 split, but just the way we used it and how successfully used it, it was the best example. So I do think we saw a bit of Felix Jones in that game, which I think will please a lot of England fans. I think look, at the end of the day, I love the Six Nations. I want it to be as competitive as possible. So these kind of results as I said, we're going into Six Nations and mathematically 4 teams can win this weekend, and that's kind of where you want the Six Nations. It would have been really quite boring going into this weekend knowing that Ireland's already wrapped it up and nothing else is really going to happen, which is not the case. So it makes for an exciting last week.
Absolutely. I mean, you do feel that it's mostly wrapped up, and we'll get into the fixtures, but the fact of the matter is that this last weekend we did see all of them were competitive, bar one half of rugby, where Wales got blown away by essentially the French forward pack that came on, which was like almost their typical first team. But let's get into the last week. So first we got Wales, Italy, which, in theory is the wooden spoon. And I think Wales would need to beat them by 13 points, if I'm not mistaken, to get out of that wooden spoon race. Then we've got Ireland versus Scotland on St. Paddy's Day in Dublin. I mean, that's going to be a hell of a test for Scotland. And similar to the England game, I think this could define the Gregor Townsend era. I'm becoming somewhat skeptical of his tenure, and I appreciate what he's done for Scotland rugby, but I worry that they're not going to be able to kick on and go kind of above this. So I think a massive performance here will kind of set that and kind of set that straight. And then obviously ending off with France versus England. The French hosting the English there, which is probably the most unpredictable of the lot, and we'll be making our predictions there. But how do you see the final weekend panning out here, Stevie?
Yeah, so I personally, I'd really like to see Italy try and get a job done. They've beaten Wales in the last couple of Six Nations games that they've had, and to avoid that wooden spoon. But when we see Italy going back-to-back wins, for example, in the Six Nations, and
after a draw as well. After a draw as well.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It could have been 3.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see. So I'd really like to see Italy go and kick on. They've climbed in the rankings. I think beating Wales would see them potentially climb a bit more, which would be good to see from them. And I think as Wales side, I think they'll be competitive in 2 to 3 years' time. I think coming to the World Cup in 4 years' time, I think they will have a decent side because I think they've got good players there. Scotland, Ireland, I see it being pretty one-sided, but I'd really like to see Scotland have a go. I'd like to see Finn Russell really start to throw that gauntlet down for that British and Irish Lions spot, which I think it's his anyway. I don't think any flower half in the 4 home nations come anywhere close to him at the moment. But that France-England game is an interesting one because France, for me, has been tremendously poor the Six Nations, and then had a pretty good game this past weekend, but against a struggling Welsh side. So I think this would be a good gauge as to exactly if the England team has really stepped up and whether they're that competitive, and is this France team back, for example, or at least half back, or was it a bit of just a fluke performance against a poor Welsh side? So I think that for me is going to give me the most information with regards to where teams are with that game. I think the Scotland and the Ireland game should be fun though. I think, as you mentioned, the occasions and Paddy's Day, 2 teams that like to attack, 2 teams that can score really nice tries. I think it'll be a good watch.
Yeah, and obviously a replay of the group stage game where Ireland effectively kind of blew the socks of Scotland and knocked them out of the World Cup. So maybe a bit of vengeance there. The Scotland will be looking for on top of a frustration potentially of theirs, just like what's been kind of up and down Six Nations, and one that, looking back on it now, had they taken the opportunity to beat Italy, could have been theirs for the taking, which Scotland haven't done in many, many years. But Stevie, let's move on to the South African rugby scene, where there's a lot of talk about the next Springbok captain after Siya Kolisi.
Yeah, well, that's the buzz conversation this year, with Sirius yesterday confirming that he's not made a decision just yet about whether he will continue, but that the preference has always been that it should be an SA-based player, because that means they can come to all the alignment camps, for example. They can be involved in all the preparation. They're a little bit more flexible with regards to the rule about being available outside test windows. And the likes. And I think that we never, ever argued that. So we probably shouldn't argue it now when it rules out the one that we all want to be captains. So I think, you've got to be consistent. It's always been about the team's bigger than the individual. So I do think for me, I think the right way to do about it is to potentially go and say, right, well, we need to stick to our guns, because you don't want to start making exceptions for people. Because I think that's something that they've never done. They've always said that this is how this operates. This is how we will do it.
It definitely feels like it's the first time that any of these rulings has come back to lead to a bit of a crossroads. It's been fine. Like our international stars go play where they want to. We know that the Bok camps prefer or uncapped people. It's harder to get noticed overseas. So there's an incentive for people to stay here, at least in the beginning of their careers, to get, if they want to play international rugby, your best chance is being at a South African club. We see that. But, there's freedom to, go explore and, make the most of your career and earn more in Europe once you kind of, set that foundation layer. But this is like really the first time that there's no obvious next candidate for the of let's say a suitable age for the Springbok captain.
Yeah, so I think that's probably where the issue is coming, more so than him being removed as captain. For example, if you had Handré Pollard playing at the Bulls right now, everyone would be like, okay, cool. Well, see, your time is done, and Pollard will take over as captain, and, Bob's your uncle. If Kitshoff was still maybe playing in South Africa, I think he becomes a very good candidate for captain. So you think of South African-based players, your immediate options are obviously Eben. You've got Bongi, for example. The Kanya so you got those three for me who are the leading options. Somebody made a very good point saying, well, does the Kanya even start these days? He's had a reasonable season, but I wouldn't say he's had this sensational season. JC Creel was phenomenal in the World Cup, I think there is a conversation to be had about whether he walks back into that side. People
are speaking about how close your captain is to the ref,
as well, which is why they've often gone away from the Kanya and that's why we've seen, for example, Deon Fourie getting was the captain in the dying stages of the World Cup, and we had Handré Pollard on the field. So I think Eben probably is the leading candidate, although I'm hesitant about giving it to him because there's that old football sort of thing where you don't captain your weapon, will captaincy bring out the best in him? Is it something that he's fantastic at? I think that Eben has always been a natural leader in the squad. You see him behind the scenes. He's immense for the entire team. I'm not sure whether I want him as the referee point of call, because we want to see the enforcer Eben out there. We want to see him towing the line, pushing the boundaries, and my only worry is that it does the captaincy mean he has to almost sort of bring himself back a little bit and be a bit more diplomatic. Whereas, the Eben Etzebeth that had added a toe over this and was hyped up at, that's our favorite Eben.
Yeah, of course. Like, I think, to be fair to Eben, the way he's transformed his game and gone from like the enforcer hot-headed person to the one of the top three rugby players at the last World Cup has been because he knows how to pick his moments and he knows when to enforce and how to be diplomatic. I would probably pick him or Lucanio as my next captains, and even if it's maybe getting into co-captainship is a little bit complex, but I think if you look back at actually when Siya was made the Springbok captain, Eben was at that point the captain of Western Province. And Eben was actually Springbok captain before Sia, but he was just told that it was like an interim. It was in that interim phase where Sia wasn't quite announced yet. And
well, it was always supposed to be Warren Whiteley until he got injured. He was set to be a World Cup winning captain.
Warren Whiteley,
my poor lad.
Warren Whiteley is probably South Africa's most loved South African player, or the most loved Springbok player with the least amount of caps. Everyone loves Warren Whiteley, bro. The promise that he showed, and we just did not get to see the fruits of that labor, unfortunately. But yeah, I think for me, to be honest, like I do get the ruling, and it does seem like it's been clear in the sand. For me, I just think, how do you not have Sia as a captain? He just transcends anybody and the whole team around him. There's no one that even compares to like his leadership abilities and the way he can galvanize a group. Just it is the definition of servant leadership, and like no amount of respect can he can't grow any bigger than he is, and I think there's a lot of that respect for a lot of people in the Springbok camp, which is why I think even will be fine. And, him and Sia are obviously good mates as well, and Sia will still be in the camp. I don't think it's necessarily scary to lead around Sia. I just think it seems like we're pushing something that doesn't necessarily need to be pushed right now. So it's like he must find this next Springbok captain, and maybe it's just to carry over to one World Cup, and then you make sure you pick Pollard or Eamon, because I think those are probably the only two who are guaranteed to make the next World Cup if you're going to change it. But for me, I don't think you necessarily have to.
Yeah, look, I think the big thing obviously is, does he make the next World Cup, which is very touch and go. He'll be 37.
Evan or Sia?
Sia. So I think that's obviously also the big issue. Is from a long term thing. I think the biggest problem is that we haven't had too many young players, but young players. Like somebody's going to be the captain for the next 2 World Cups type thing. I don't think we really have had players coming in that could potentially be that person. I mean, for example, suddenly I saw people throwing around Damian Willem's name, and I was going, when has Damian Willems ever been a captaincy option? And I don't think I don't think he'd ever be the captain. I don't want Damian Willems to be the captain of Springboks. I want Damian Willems to be the best player in the world, because I genuinely think that's I think he's got that kind of talent.
Yeah.
Don't give him the captaincy. Just let him go and be the best. Literally, I think I see him as a World Player of the Year.
And he could be. He could be. Yeah. He kind of showed off what his ceiling can be at the World Cup. It's just absolutely immense. Again, he's not the captain of the Stormers side. I don't think he's like one of those people who are born leaders. I think he's one of those who's just let him let him cook. Yeah, let him cook and do his thing from the back. I think he's a person that doesn't need necessarily more weight on his shoulders. He's going to be kind of coordinating that whole backline for many, many years to come. Maybe people thought someone Morata might have broken into the team a little bit more.
He was the prodigy
by injury. He was supposed to be that next, and he is the Stormers captain, and only just come back from injury now. But it'll be ludicrous to think that he could be anywhere near Springbok captaincy, perhaps down the road. So yeah, there are no real young contenders, really. It's only people in that 30 bracket. So if you are going to stick to that, South African base rule, for me, my pick would be Evan, and then vice captain Pollard, which I think Pollard already is.
Yeah, I think that's probably that's the safe way to go. That's how you can stick to the rule without and I mean, in terms of how it all works within the trade group, I mean, we've always known that it's not a case of Sia's the only person that chats in the huddle, for example. It's always been a very collaborative effort. There's always been that leadership group of Bongi, Sia, Dwayne, Pollard, Lekanya, and I don't think that'll really change. So I think it's an environment where you can have this kind of situation, and it's not gonna compromise the dressing room. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, Stevie, let's move on to the football from last week. We had some big matchups. United winning 2-0, 2 pens at Everton. Tottenham with a massive victory against Villa, closing in that gap for the top 4 race. Arsenal squeezing out a win versus Brentford in the 85th minute.
Yeah.
Kai Havertz goal. Chelsea winning 3-2, and the big one of the weekend, Liverpool City 1-1
draw. Yay!
Oh, I mean, I was in Italy, so I wasn't even able to watch the game. I was following live updates on Twitter, but I've watched the highlights many times. I really feel like it was Liverpool's. It was there for the taking for Liverpool. As a Liverpool fan, I'm just so disappointed we didn't get that job done there. Granted, they were, City looked incredibly good, and they are an incredibly good team. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to take a draw versus them. I just think that is we'll look back on that as an opportunity to win that Luis Diaz breakaway. To go in and just nestle that in the bottom corner was just a massive opportunity. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it's sorry, I lost you a little bit there, Scholtz. Now you're back. I think you guys probably should have won it. I think especially, City are not going to drop too many other points. They're a side that don't really stuff it up.
Very easy running.
Yeah, and so I felt you guys at home had to be braver. Had to just say, listen, if we want to win this league, we've got to go out. Because to be honest, I think 1 point versus no points. I think the gamble was worth it to get those 3 points to actually create the gap between City. I think it would have been worth being a bit more aggressive because I think that. Yeah, I just don't see City slipping. I look at the pre-fair. Arsenal don't look like they're going to slip at the moment, but we'll wait and see what's going to happen with them. But I do feel that I think you guys probably should have been a bit braver, to be honest, and just throwing the gauntlet out just a bit more.
And I mean, to be fair, look at the injuries. When you think no Konate, no Salah, no Trent, no Alisson, like. The boys are playing like on their last legs, and there's at least a week break. Jokes, I'm lying. We're playing in Europa League, and then FA Cup
playing tomorrow.
So there's no real break. Yeah. It's unrelenting, and the only 2 teams that could keep this up are Liverpool and City with the amount of injuries that are going on. I think Arsenal have as many injuries. They're going down, but Arsenal coming in clutch last night with the penalty win in the Champions League. I was watching every minute and enjoying every minute of just watching those Oaks run. I didn't really care about the result because it was a kind of a win-win. If they get through, they still have to be competitive.
They have to play more games. If they knock out, it's a mental thing. Yeah, so it's just I
do think this will actually help them. I mean, that sounds a completely stupid step. Of course, getting through is going to help you, but I do think the mental, mentally, they are continuing to win hard games. Shown in that Brentford one, they've won quite a few in the 80th or so in this season. So I do think that's going to help them more than it's going to be for their demise. But I mean, I don't know. How far do you really see them going in the Champions League? Are they going to be able to hold on in the Premier League? Can they do both?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we keep saying we're kind of waiting for them to sort of fall apart, stuff like that. And at the moment, they're just not. I do think they don't have injuries at the moment, really. Jurgen Timber obviously did his ACL, so he hasn't been around, but they've been pretty fortunate, and I don't think that they've got phenomenal squad depth. I think they've got a proper starting line. I think they've got a reasonable depth, but for example, as a United fan, you look at our injury list and it's childish.
Yeah.
And I think if Arsenal had similar type of injuries, then I think that they wouldn't be anywhere near this. And I think that they're playing a lot of players into the ground, and I think it will catch up. It generally does catch up. And also, this is now coming to a stage where, from a mental point of view, you start having the mind games. We slipped from last season. We never won a Champions League. Are we going to be the team to be able to do that? Do they have the personalities in that side? They don't have a lot of people in that side who have won big trophies. You've got Jorginho, for example, and the Kai Havertz, who's just won a Champions League, and they're probably, that's in theory your players who have been there, done that, won things, but they've not won things consistently and across different clubs and stuff like that. So it's not like they've got that incredible experience. I mean, Gabriel Jesus has been part of the City side, so he's got there. But at the same time, you're only a non-winner until you're not. So there's always going to be that first time, for example. Yeah. But I think that given the fact that they're having to play so much, I think it does potentially catch up to them. And if it does, then I could see it going pear-shaped pretty quickly.
You wouldn't, as an Arsenal fan, they're only left in the big ones, the Champions League and the Premier League, and you wouldn't really want to go this season without winning without winning a trophy if you're them, because they really have been impressive. I haven't been a strong believer in Mikel Arteta, but what he's done is insane at Arsenal, and you have to give them kudos. And if they go on and win a Premier League or a Champions League, I think this kicks them on into next year, because then this is a young squad, and then they're gonna make maybe 2 or 3 big signings of you kind of take your pick when you win one of those 2 tournaments of the cream of the crop during the next transfer window. So if they do kick on, it's going to be very impressive, but I still have my doubts, but they worry me. They worry me a lot, and that says a lot about how good they've been. Tonight we've got Dortmund, PSV, and Atletico Madrid versus Inter. Dortmund aggregate 1-1, while I believe Inter lead 1-0 at the break. So we'll see who goes through into the last 2 spots of the quarterfinals there. And only a couple of Premier League games this weekend: Burnley, Brentford, Luton, Forest, Fulham, Tottenham, and West Ham, Villa, probably the pick of the games. But the big ones going on to the FA Cup. We've got City versus Newcastle, which should be good. A bit of a up and down Newcastle. Hard to really know which one turns up on the day. Leicester versus Chelsea. Leicester have been really, really good in the Championship. Look to be coming back up. Wolves, Coventry. Rules have been very good. Obviously, probably favourites there. And then the big one of Man United, Liverpool. So decent amount of footy this weekend. Love a FA Cup weekend. Always exciting. But we'll get into our predictions for that Man United Liverpool game a little bit later. Let's quickly touch on the cricket of the last week. 2 big test series drawing to a close. One that felt like
big.
I mean,
is England that big? I mean, for me, it's just India beating an England team which now has a 25% win ratio in the World Test Championship. They're saving Test cricket 1 loss at a time.
We called it though. As soon as the first one, I said 4-1. 4-1.
Yeah, we literally said, they go win the first one. Our reaction was like, all right, cool, 4-1. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, and we also called last week, K-Series done. It's going to be a big victory.
Yeah, and resounding. To be honest, I don't know if this is a good England Test team. I think the way that they play allows them to win certain games, which is probably the best way that they could play. So I don't think it's even necessarily a matter of bringing Bazball into question. I don't think they necessarily have the players to compete. I mean, Ben Stokes scoring almost no runs in the series. Johnny Bear scoring very few runs in the series. Their highest run scorer was Zach Crawley, averaging 40, to be fair. It's not bad, but if you're averaging, your highest average is 40, in an away series to India, you are going to struggle. That is the fact of the matter, is that they didn't have anyone consistently scoring runs, and it was a couple big knocks. Duckett was 1 big knock, Joe Root with a big 100. A couple standout performances, but I mean, on the flip side, you have Jaiswal 712 runs at an average of 89. Shubman Gill 450 runs, average of 50 plus. Rohit Sharma chipping in with runs. Their runs are just kind of coming from everywhere. So, and you're probably never going to have better bowlers than India than the Indian team in India. So, I mean, Tom Hartley, I think, stood out for me. He looked decent. And will continue to, I think, kind of take over that Jack Leach role in the Indian setup. But yeah, they really got blown out of the water.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Is it a good test side? And I think they play aggressive. In inverted commas, they play aggressively, and I think if it comes off, it comes off. And it can come off. When it does come off, it looks amazing. And, you know, to score 420 in the second innings in that first test, to win by 28 runs, you know, you sit there going, oh, that's proper test cricket. They then lost by over 100 runs, by 400 runs, by 5 wickets, and innings in 64 runs. So, you know, they rather the fourth test, which was close-ish, but not massively in the end. You know, it was just the first innings big score, and then they got blown away for by 145. So they won the first test really excitedly, and then weren't really in the series. So yeah, I just think that, you know, whilst they're results driven, you know, the results are not justifying this concept that they are this, you know, groundbreaking test side. I think they're sitting second or third last in the World Test Champion. Yes, it's brand new into the test cycle, but this is also a team that plays the most tests. You know, I was having this conversation and somebody was like, oh, but you guys would not go to India and beat them in a test series. I'm like, yo, you're damn right we wouldn't. We play 4 tests a year, you know, type thing. You know, we don't play test cricket. We have to relearn how to play the game every single time. It happens, you know. England have played 10 tests. We don't know
which people are in form. We have no idea who's in form.
We had our test series now, and against, and now you have to sit there going, all right, cool. So, you know, who's our test team? Well, it's in August, the next time you play test cricket. So what we're talking about now is irrelevant, because we all know how people's form, you know, goes up and down. So we're now talking about picking players based on a 4-day series, which finished last week, in the first week of March, or was it even the week before, for a test series in August. So, you know, we've played in the current World Test Championship, you know, four tests.
Yeah, 4 tests.
England have played 10, and they've won 3, lost 6, drawn 1. They've also had minus 19 points worth of deductions, by the way. So, you know, they're sitting with a point percentage of 17.5. The only person lower than them on the table is Sri Lanka, who played 2 and lost 2.
Yeah. No, I think they need a breath of fresh air. I think at least batting wise, I think kind of Johnny Bairstow seems to have run his course a little bit. I like their opening partnership, to be fair. Like, I think Crawley's actually been okay in the last 2 years, and, you know, seems to thrive under the system. But, you know, you need people who can dig a little bit more. Ben Stokes needs to step up as a batsman. If you're going to be captain and you're not bowling, he did bowl a little bit in the final test, but you know, that's something that if you're going from an all-rounder to a batsman, you need to be averaging, you know, in the 40s, and he hasn't been for a long time. But let's take it across to New Zealand, where I was incredibly disappointed in New Zealand this series. I don't think Australia were that incredible. I think this Australian batting lineup is there for the taking. And they've allowed them back into, it feels like back into 2 tests. Crazily, I think player of the series is Matt Henry. I've never seen that before in a when your team loses 2-0 in the test series. If you get player of the series, I mean, you look at Cam Green, got 238 runs with a couple of wickets in between. It probably would have gone for him. Alas, essentially Australia chasing down 281 with 3 wickets remaining. Just such a clutch knock from not my boy.
Careful. We like him, but we can't call him our boy. You know, he makes Australia harder to dislike, but that's about as far as we'll go.
Yeah, but he has just got to be the most clutch number 9 that there is. It feels like he can never score runs when they're on top, but as soon as they need someone to hold the fort, he is there. He just gets behind every ball, blocks. King at getting it down to third man for single, get the other oak on strike, and fair play to Alex Currie, who actually hasn't been in the runs recently. Pretty much none of these Australian batsmen have been in the runs. You know, a 90 from Arnis also in the first innings, who has also been struggling.
Under pressure.
Under a lot of pressure. Also, this sort of was ludicrous to think that people wanted to drop him being the only 20-something-year-old in this team, like other than him and Cam Green, like he is, and you know what he's capable of. You can't drop someone like that. And you know, Mitch Marsh also standing up with an 80 knock of 80, but just New Zealand don't have that cutting edgeness about this team quite like they did a couple years ago, where it felt like they would put this away. Whereas Australia just feel like they believe in their players so much, or their players just have this innate belief in themselves, maybe an arrogance that just allows them to play so much more freely. And even when under, really under a hell of a lot of pressure, both times in their innings, there were quite a few wickets down early on for under 100 runs. I think it was like 5 down in both scenarios. They didn't fault in both times. They managed to get, over 250 runs. So you got to tip your hat to Australians going away and getting the job done on both occasions.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite of England. I think we talk about England not being a good test team. I think you look at Australia and individuals' performances have kind of sort of dipped in things, so especially the batting. Some people have, but there's so much. It's a good test team. There's someone who stands up every single time.
Yeah,
it's very rarely that there'll be that blowout innings, and there's just
when last did you see Australia crumble to like less than like 150? I can't remember the time. Their bad innings get them to 200 plus every time.
Yeah.
And that's
their worst innings was 164.
I mean,
that.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was their only failure in inverted commas, in the entire series, and even that had Nathan Lyon scoring 41. So that's the thing. That not even if their batsmen fail, their bowlers clutch up. I mean, as you mentioned, that Pat Cummins innings, right? To get them there, and Alex Currie coming through with that. They had players scoring runs throughout. Different players scoring runs throughout the series. I just think that they're such a well-rounded side. Cameron Green, for example, coming back into the fray. Is he good enough to play as just a batsman? Well, he averaged 200. He averaged 79, scoring 238 runs across 4 innings. Will you tell me if he's good enough to play this? So,
but
it's just no chinks in the armor.
It's that belief that they were so, and that's why I'm disappointed. I think in this New Zealand team, because they had Australia on the ropes, and then they let Cam Green go and get 170. They had Australia on the ropes, and they let Alex Carey go in and get a 98 not out in the final innings. They had so much momentum, and not being able to capitalize, and that's very frustrating to watch, because I want nothing more than Australia to lose.
Yes.
So they are not in my good books or New Zealand. But yeah, just I think a little bit of just an extra, cutting edge, probably maybe on the bowling side. I have been very impressed with Matt Henry recently, him picking up 17 sticks. So, granted, he did play very well to get that player of the series. But I'm also a little bit disappointed that there are more test matches, because both were pretty tightly contested.
This whole 2-match test series is not for me. Yeah,
nonsense, absolute nonsense. Minimum 3.
Yeah, has to be. We can't be playing 2-match test series. No.
And also can't be giving 5-match test series versus for England in India. That's also a non-starter. Give them 4. You know what I mean? Like they haven't won it in 4. I don't like giving them more is increasing their likelihood.
You're not changing anything that's happening there. Maybe
India
we'll give it
3.
Maybe it'll smash and grab 2-1 there.
Yeah. No, the longer you take it on, the much, much more unlikely. I think India fall fast on them. But also, to be fair, we didn't touch on in the India game. Fair play, Jimmy Anderson picking up his 700th wicket. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see that again from a fast bowler.
Well, we just don't play enough Test cricket. I mean, KJ Rabada plays 120 tests. He'll get there, but he will never play 120 tests. So
even that's I think quite bold to assume, considering I think the way Jimmy's got there, obviously you have to play. He's closing on like 200 tests now, but I think the way that he's managed to keep himself injury free throughout his career, and just still remain to adapt to kind of
Well, you said how often does KJ Rabada miss a test?
No, he isn't. But typically with fast bowlers, how often do you see them drop off later on in their career? So we don't know if that will come up with KG. Hopefully it doesn't. I mean, we saw how Dale Steyn quickly went from quite an injury-free player to someone who could not get fit at all.
Yeah, but I think the main point is that Rabada's been playing Test cricket for 7 years, and he's played 62 matches.
Yeah,
that should have been well over 100. I mean, he's taken almost 300 wickets. So, if he had played, as I said, if he played, I think if he plays, he should probably have played about 100 test matches by now. Yeah, maybe at least 80, 90. And then he'd be sitting on 450, almost 500 wickets. So then he could be in contention. I mean, his strike rate is 39.2. It's disgustingly good.
It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But yeah, Stevie, let's move on to our predictions for the week. And I believe it is you to start. We are starting with the Titans versus Lions.
Yeah. Interesting game. Very, very interesting game. We do have the T20 challenge currently happening down over here. I think I might go and watch the game one in the next week or two. Actually, go and check out and see what's happening there, because it's a cool tournament at the moment, especially because all the IPL players are currently still here, the South African ones. They haven't departed just yet. So we've got your Devo Brevis. I mean, for example, I think it was last week Friday, we had KJ Abada playing in the same game as the very prodigiously talented Quinn Mapaka. He was part of the Lions series, by the way, and is already one of the leading wicket takers. So that's quite exciting. So yeah, I think the Lions are 2 from 2. Ryan Rickleton is picked up where he left off and currently leading the stats.
He's looking more like an ODI batsman than a Test batsman all of a sudden. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great one. As you said, it's good to see Proteas in these local games. Like even just Adam Markram playing for the Titans win last. Yeah,
no, exactly.
But Stevie, I want to hear what's the prediction then coming from your side?
I think the Lions take it. I think that Lions batting lineup is childishly good. I think that when you got a situation that if Rickleton and Reza Hendricks fail, you still got a very informed Ian Mulder, you still got a Mitch van Buren, you still got a Rassie van der Dussen. And then when it comes to your bowling, you've got Quinn Mapaka, who's taking wickets for fun at the moment. I don't know if we'll see KG play. I'm hoping we will. But Bjorn Fortuin, we all know how useful he is with the ball, for example. Janae Darwood's taking a couple of sticks and stuff. So, yeah, I think at the Wanderers, I've got to back my boys. So I'll go Lions with T20s are so difficult to call from a margin point of view.
So difficult.
So I'll go with, I don't know, a 20-run victory, maybe 15-run victory, or 3 wickets.
15 to 3 wickets. I'm gonna outdo you here, Stevie. I think they're gonna go. I'm also gonna go Lions.
Okay.
I just think that batting lineup is deep. I think I'm gonna go for 25 runs or 5 wickets. I think Lions have been kind of the premier local South African team for a couple of years now. Bit of a rivalry. Titans typically probably been held that spot often, and it's gone between these two teams probably in South Africa the most. But yeah, I'm seeing a Lions win, probably a little bit more than you. That's why this is the advantage of going second. But let's move into England versus France in the final week of Six Nations. What are you saying?
I think France take it. I think that France at home have a lot to prove. No, I think they do, and I think that England. I think there'll be a hangover for England. So France, I think they're playing in. I think they're playing in Marseille or Lyon. Actually, I think they're playing in Lyon. So look, France at home. I think that they'll want to prove that they're still the team they are, and I think that pack, when it does turn up, I think you can get a hold of that England pack. So I want to go France by 5.
France by 5. Okay, I'm going to back the Poms. I see where you're coming from. Like, it would be very English and this England team to have such a big performance and then to back it up with something just so mediocre. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming back to bite me, but and I don't know what's come over me, but I want the English to do well, you know?
I don't know.
Yeah. First calling Pat Cummins, my boy, need South Africa to play some bloody sport.
Yeah, we need to get you back to this country at this show. Yeah. I'm worried about what's going on here.
But yeah, I'll back the country I'm currently residing in. I think it's going to be very narrow though, so I'm going to go England by 3. I hope they take the game to them. I think it's such a big French pack. I think the French backline isn't quite where it was at, during the World Cup, obviously missing Dupont, as everyone's kind of recounting on. But I like the look of this England team. And I like the way that they went about approaching that Ireland game, not just going for the bomb, Furbank, Feoboso, just really kind of new players stepping up. And last but not least, Stevie, the old rivalry, United versus Liverpool in the FA Cup quarterfinals at Old Trafford. What are you saying? Are United going all in on the FA Cup this season?
We kind of have to, don't we? Like, got anything else to play for?
No.
I mean, even say, we're going all in, what does that even bloody look like?
Is it your first? Do you think it's your first team that'll play?
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Well, I don't know if you've watched, but we basically never play a second team. It's why we've got so many injuries. Like, we've had Carabao Cup games, and we're like, well, we'll have to play Marcus Rashford for confidence. I'm like, well, no, you actually don't. We can look at other people. No, that's the biggest problem. It's been like zero rotation. He doesn't like to rotate, and we've then played weird games and still played badly. And I think the problem is that we've tried to play our first team against weaker sides to try and, I don't know if it's to try and put the tactics together, but the game plan together, it hasn't really worked. The nice thing is we've got a full week and a bit between matches. We played Everton on Saturday and we don't play the midweek. So whereas you guys will play Sunday, Thursday, and then Sunday again.
Yeah.
So in theory, we'll have the legs. I think a lot of it comes down to whether Rasmus Højlund is back and whether we actually have a striker. So he apparently could be back, whether he'll start or not. But I can never predict a Liverpool win against United. So I'll go.
To be fair, Stevie, you've gone first for 2 of the time, so I should actually probably go first.
So yeah, jump in. You go in there, and I'll welcome you.
I could have let you go down that one. Well, I'm never going to put United as a win versus Liverpool, so we know that there should be a winner here. I think it's going to be the kids, to be honest. I'm actually going to go for a. Is there extra time, or is it straight penalties in the FA Cup?
I think there's extra time. I think there's extra time. I know there wasn't for. So the problem is all changing. Some of the Hero Cup they have for some rounds, don't have for others.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. But yeah, let's make this simple. I'm going to go 2-1 the kids. Obviously, kids versus United. I was going to say penalties, but I'm going to go 2-1 to Liverpool.
2-1, okay.
I'm really worried though. I mean we're ahead in our Europa League tie, but I think you can't completely gamble that one out of the equation.
No,
so you got to make sure you get through that. And then a Thursday Sunday turnaround is nuts. At least they the first one on Thursday is at home, and then United's a bus trip away rather than having to fly across Europe to go somewhere. But still, I think that's a wild turnaround time. So, and as stretched as we are already, I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be kind of a 50. I think both games are going to be like half first team, half kids. But yeah, that's my prediction.
I think I'll match you, but with United, I think because I've got a bad feeling we'll concede. I do think we can find two goals. Marcus Rashford, knowing him, he'll either drop an absolute 0 out of 10 or he'll bang another goal of the season contender. It's kind of where he is at the moment. And I think if Hoyland plays, I think he's finally got to grips with things, and I think he could potentially net. So, but I've got a bad feeling we could see. I mean, our defence, who knows who's going to play? We could have Buddy Johnny Evans playing again, and nothing against Johnny Evans. He's actually done a job for us. But I mean, the fact that Johnny Evans is starting centre back for United these days shows you the issues in and around the club. So yeah, I think we're going the same thing, basically, just backing our teams.
Okay, you're also going 2-1.
2-1, yeah.
Okay, 2-1 United. Okay. Well, Stevie, the scores on the doors. We'll be back next week to reflect. But yeah, I mean, a massive weekend in the rugby and football world, and it'll be the end of the Six Nations, which feels like it's been around forever. To be fair, those two non-Six Nations weeks, I think, need to be abolished, personally. But that's not a decision that I can make currently in this chair.
That's not right now. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, one day. But Stevie, thank you so much. Great show. Lovely to catch up on all the talking points. I can't imagine England cricket will be very happy with us. But hey, give us more test matches. Come play 5 test matches in South Africa, and we'll be happy. Come play in South Africa.
Bring your baseball down here.
Yeah, bring your baseball down here. Exactly. But Stevie, thank you very much. And everyone listening, appreciate the support. Please smash a like and subscribe to wherever you happen to be listening to the show. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Cool. Thanks, Scholtz.